It's the kind of song you've probably sung along to without thinking, windows down, volume up, somewhere on a long drive into the night. It's catchy, it's upbeat, but behind those jangly guitars and that shoutable chorus is a story soaked in pain. A song written by a man who never got to enjoy the fame it brought, who died shortly after hearing his words echo on stages around the world. This is the story of Doug Hopkins, the brilliant, tormented songwriter behind Gin Blossom's biggest hit. A man who wrote his heart into a song about lost love, addiction, and regret. A man who gave the world a masterpiece, only to be cast aside by the very band he created. A man who never saw the light that his music gave to others because his own life had fallen into darkness. Doug Hopkins was a gifted songwriter, a guitarist with a poet's soul. Born in Seattle in 1961 but raised in Tempe, Arizona, Doug had a mind full of melody and a heart that beat with melancholy. In 1987, he co-founded Gin Blossoms, bringing together a group of musicians who would later define the alternative rock sound of the early 90s. But Hopkins wasn't just the guy with the guitar. He was the engine behind the band's early sound. Their backbone, their lyrical voice. He wrote with honesty, often brutal, sometimes poetic, always real. Hey Jealousy was written in the late 1980s, years before Gin Blossoms made it big. And like most of Doug's songs, it wasn't just about a feeling. It was about a moment, a memory, a mistake. The story begins with Cathy Swafford. She was Doug's girlfriend at the time, and according to people close to him, she was the one. But Doug, like so many tortured artists, was wrestling demons he couldn't outrun. He drank heavily, he cheated, Cathy eventually left him, and that decision left a mark he would carry until his last breath. Hey Jealousy wasn't just a song, it was his apology, his plea, his last desperate attempt to explain what he couldn't say face to face. Ed Masley of the Arizona Republic described the song this way. A guy shows up at his ex's house too drunk to drive and asks if he can spend the night. You can see I'm in no shape for driving, and anyway, I've got no place to go. It's a pitiful, heartbreaking admission, and it only gets more painful. She was the best he'd ever had, Masley writes, and Hopkins admits it. If I hadn't blown the whole thing years ago, I might not be alone. That's not just a line. That's a confession, the kind you whisper when you know the damage is done. And yet, he's not done hoping. The chorus, so full of energy when sung out loud, is actually soaked in desperation. Tomorrow we can drive around this town and let the cops chase us around. The past is gone, but something might be found to take its place. He's clinging to a dream that they can start again, that the damage isn't permanent, that maybe, just maybe, the past can be paved over with one perfect day. And then there's the most self-aware line of all. If you don't expect too much from me, you might not be let down. It's one of the most brutal and beautiful lyrics in all of 90s rock, because it says everything. He's telling her and himself that he's not the man she deserves, but he's still asking her just for a night, just so he won't be alone. Hopkins originally included the line, "You can trust me not to drink." It was raw, it was real. But lead singer Robin Wilson pushed to change it. He was tired of the band being so closely associated with alcohol, tired of the endless references to drinking, especially since their name, Gin Blossoms, was already a nod to alcohol abuse, specifically the reddish skin condition caused by chronic alcoholism. Wilson changed the lyric to, "You can trust me not to think." A clever twist, but one that didn't sit well with Doug. To him, that lyric was the truth. It wasn't clever. It was confessional, and changing it, even for commercial reasons, felt like betrayal. When the song eventually became a radio hit, Hopkins couldn't even bear to listen. "I turn it off when it comes on the radio," he once admitted. It hurt too much. It was his song, but it wasn't his anymore. The Gin Blossoms signed to A&M Records and began recording their major label debut, New Miserable Experience, in 1992. Doug wrote or co-wrote many of the songs on that album, including Found Out About You, another aching anthem. Hopkins and his Peter Buck by way of Steve Jones slash and jangle guitar runs are all over it. Even lead singer Robin Wilson won't deny that the album was Hopkins's baby. That's him playing guitar, Wilson has said. Those are his songs. His fingerprints are on every note, his anguish buried beneath the shimmering melodies. The Gin Blossoms made their way to Memphis's Ardent Studios, Big Star's old stomping grounds, where John Hampton worked as a staff producer. The first week in the studio showed promise and productivity, but things quickly unraveled. Hopkins began drinking heavily and became increasingly uncooperative. Studio sessions were erratic. Most of Doug's guitar parts on the album were actually captured during the drum tracking sessions, says Hampton. He wasn't in any shape to re-record them later. Have you ever seen Leaving Las Vegas? Imagine trying to make a record with someone like that. Maybe it was the pressure, finally getting the shot he'd waited his whole life for. But instead of stepping up like Noel Gallagher and taking charge, Doug completely unraveled. That unraveling led him home. Hopkins left Memphis early, abandoning the rest of the band to finish the album without him. The widely told version of his departure involves him passing out and missing his first flight. On the second attempt, an ardent engineer reportedly doused him with mouthwash and cheap aftershave to mask the alcohol, then walked him onto the plane. When Doug left this giant void, Jesse filled it, says Wilson. He took it upon himself to lead, and he worked like hell. There are parts of that record where you've got 9 Jessies on guitar and 3 Jessies on vocals. Hopkins later admitted he checked into a Tempe hospital the night he returned from Memphis. Still, he always denied the band's claims that he was too far gone to contribute meaningfully. But to everyone else, the writing was on the wall. The band couldn't rely on him, and under pressure from the label, they made a decision that would haunt all of them. They fired Doug Hopkins. He was paid $15,000 to sign away his royalties and was replaced by guitarist Scott Johnson. Hopkins spiraled. Watching the band rise without him was unbearable. Hey Jealousy became a massive hit. The album went multi-platinum. The band toured the world. And Doug? He was back in Tempe. Broke, bitter, alone. He watched as his songs played on the radio, as fans screamed the lyrics he wrote, and as his former bandmates stood on stages that should have been his. In December of 1993, just weeks after Hey Jealousy reached the Billboard Top 40, Doug Hopkins took his own life. He was 32 years old. He died with a .38 caliber pistol and a lifetime of heartbreak. His death stunned the band, the fans, and the entire Tempe music scene. The man who had built the foundation of Gin Blossoms didn't live long enough to see how far they would go, but he left behind a legacy and a warning. Hey Jealousy endures not because it's catchy, but because it's honest. Because it captures something that so many people feel but can't articulate, the shame of ruining something good and the helplessness of wanting it back. It's a drunk man's love letter, a desperate voicemail never sent, a song about regret disguised as a summer hit. There's a reason the song still resonates today. Everyone has a moment they'd take back, a person they lost because of their own mistakes. Doug Hopkins gave voice to that pain. He put it into music, and even if he couldn't save himself, he made sure we never forget what it sounds like to be broken. And maybe that's why it still hurts to listen to. Because behind that chorus, behind the driving guitars and upbeat rhythm, is a man begging for one more chance, and he never got it. Doug Hopkins wrote a hit song, but more than that, he wrote a confession. Hey Jealousy isn't just a 90s rock anthem. It's a tragedy, a eulogy, a memory. And every time it plays, we remember the man who wrote it. Too late, too sad, and too gone to see what he created. And that is the most haunting lyric of all.